Guys, this is the class where I teach you all the secrets of this technique. And from now on, you're gonna understand how it works. Here we have a star that morphs into a ball. In this animation, this morph doesn't look good. It simply changed from a star to a ball, and this is not convincing at all. This is a simple movement. I have a star and a circle, a new object that controls both of them, and in the middle of the trajectory, from point A to point B, I simply cut the star and have the circle. There is one simple thing here that I can do to make this morph way more convincing. To show you that, I will select both keyframes and I will come here to see my animation curve. I want you to make sure you are in the speed graph, which is the case here. To check it, you just come here and go speed graph instead of value graph. So you see that we have a linear movement, which means the speed doesn't change. Now, I want us to come back and put my cursor here at the moment where I change from one shape to another. I will select it again and come back to the curve. By selecting the 2 points, which are the 2 keyframes, I will press F9, so they go to 0, and now I have a curve like that. That means that now we have ease in this movement. What I need to make sure here is that the peak of the speed, which is the peak of this curve, is exactly at the moment where the star changes and becomes a circle. But I need a more drastic movement here to make it even better. So I will pull this handle here and pull this handle here. I will get very close to the center, but I want to make sure this tip here, the peak of the curve, is exactly where my needle is right now. If you remember the animation before, you can watch it now and see that now I have a very convincing morph. Even though it is still just the star becoming the circle, that happens because the keyframes in this moment here are far away from each other, which gives the impression that in this period of time, the star really morphed into the circle. You can also see that if the peak of the speed is somewhere else, the morph doesn't look as good. So to show that, I will select both again, I will go back to our speed graph, I will make sure the peak of the curve is now around here. So I will pull those handles. If you play the animation, you see that now this is bad because you kind of see the star becoming the sphere very clearly. So I believe I convinced you that the morph works way better when it happens in the exact moment where we have the peak of the speed in the movement of the position. And this is how we are going to morph any shape to any other shape. But it's very important that we are not only changing very different shapes like we are doing with the star. We are doing a little bit more. This is what I did in this example here. Look how good this morph looks. This one is a very smooth morph. Let me show you how I did that. Of course, I have to make sure the peak of my speed is at this point here. So if I go to my graph, I see that this is exactly the peak of the speed and it's where my shape changes. But in this case here, I did more. I animated the shape layers at this point here. So here I have a star and this is what I have here. I just changed slightly the shape of the star by moving those points here and animating the path. In this moment, the star changes to the circle. But again, I don't have the circle straight away. I have first a shape that kind of remembers the star, but it quickly becomes the circle. In this curve here, I made that. I also want the peak of this curve to be here in the beginning. So the curve starts with a very high speed and finish very smoothly. With the star, the path of the star, I have the opposite. And this is how I have a very smooth transition, but you can see that from this point to this point, I kind of changed the shape, but nobody's realized because I make this shape closer to the circle And from this circle here, I modify it so the shape would be closer to the star. For now, I just want you to understand the technique and understand how we can trick the eye by pretending to have a full transition even though we don't actually have it. I hope you enjoy it.